Hello, everybody. Joey, alcoholic. More recovery guy stuff here. I'm going to continue my series of breaking down the big book for you guys. I'm going to be doing the doctor's opinion today. So, again, I absolutely love AA and everyone that's in it, even the horrible people. I just like the fact that they put this doctor's opinion chapter before everything else because when you're sick, when you have a mental health issue, what do you go do? You go to see a doctor, and the doctor basically will refer you out to psychiatrists or whoever you need to go see from that point on. So, these guys were smart and they were kind of like, well, I think that people are interested in hearing what doctors have to say about this issue. So, let's get right into the chapter. If you guys have it, XXV and the normal big books, the doctor's opinion. So, we of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. Convincing testimony must surely come from medical men who have had experience with the suffering of our members and have witnessed our return to health. A well known doctor, a chief physician at a nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcohol and drug addiction, gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter. So they're obviously referring to William D. Silkworth. And the old story goes that in the earlier editions of the Big Book, it didn't say very truly yours, William D. Silkworth, at the end of his letters because he just did not want to have his name on this because at the time, I guess this book is based around a higher power and it's based around that higher power and the relationship that you build with it, saving you from alcoholism. So as a doctor or a man of science, if you will, he couldn't necessarily give this book an endorsement. Also, he says weird shit in this chapter, pardon my French, about this book being more important than anything doctors have been able to do for addicts and alcoholics and stuff like that. So, for a chief physician at a prominent hospital saying that this book is kind of better than traditional medical treatment, that was also kind of like career suicide for Dr. Silkworth. But back to the point of this book, this is a well known doctor, a chief physician at a nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcoholic and drug addiction. So this guy's not a joke. This guy's the leader of one of the main hospitals in the entire in all of the US of A. So I don't know, as far as like Western society goes, or let's just say North America, he's like one of the top guys in all of North America when it comes to alcohol and drug addiction. So there's not a whole lot of people that would have been as credible or better to have featured in your book than this guy. So this is the letter that he writes to Alcoholics Anonymous, who requested that he write a letter for them. To whom it may concern, I have specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. In late 1934, I attended a patient who, though he had been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic of a type I had come to regard as hopeless. And kind of in like, AA lingo, a hopeless alcoholic means someone with both symptoms. They have the insanity and they have the allergy. So if you hear people talking about hopeless alcoholics, real alcoholics, chronic alcoholics, they're going to be referring to people with both the main symptoms of alcoholism, which is a physical allergy and a subtle form of insanity or mental obsession, whatever kind of word you want to choose. So, in the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. So they're talking about Bill here. This is the competent businessman. So Bill, his third time in treatment, he required certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. So even for someone like Bill, like relapse was part of his story, if you will. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. This has become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. This men and over 100 others appear to have recovered. So again, he gets sober, he presents his conceptions to other alcoholics, which is step 12, and then he impresses upon them that they must do the likewise with others, which again is step 12. Then it says this is become the basis of a rapidly growing fellowship of these men and their families. And what is that telling you guys? Step 12 is the basis of all of every 12-step fellowship. Okay, the 12th step, working with others, everyone from every meeting that you've ever been to in all 12-step based treatment centers are based on one addict, one alcoholic helping another. So if you guys are serious about recovery and you want to recreate your lives and you want to become happy and you want to become content and confident and just love your lives again, you're going to have to start wrapping your head around the idea that you're going to need to sponsor people when you're done. Okay? If you're the type of person that goes to meetings, okay, drinks the coffee, eats the donuts, and doesn't drink the Kool-Aid, metaphorically speaking, or maybe you do even, and you get a sponsor and he helps you out and you discover, a fellowship and you make friends and stuff like that, and you're just like, well, I don't need to give back by sponsoring other people. Like, what kind of person are you? Still inherently very selfish and still probably not ready to continue on with your AA journey. You're probably not going to make it. I'm just going to say that. If you're a real alcoholic like me and you decide to go through and take advantage of what the AA program has to offer, and then you're not going to sponsor people after, there's something wrong. If you don't have a genuine desire to work with others, there may be something along the line that you have missed. Okay, so let's continue with what Dr. Silkworth has to say. He says, I personally know scores of cases who were of the type with whom other methods had failed completely. These facts appear to be of extreme medical importance because of the extraordinary possibilities of rapid growth inherent in this group. They may mark a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism. These men may well have remedy for thousands of such situations. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves, which is, again, a pretty insane endorsement from someone who's as esteemed as William D. Silkworth. Hey, these junkies and alcoholics, you guys can rely absolutely about anything that they say about themselves. Now, I do understand the demographic of these programs was different back in the day, so I wouldn't say that you can just go to an AA meeting and then trust everything that everybody says. That would be absolutely a horrible nightmare for everyone involved. But William D. Silkworth is saying, like, okay, there's scores of cases of alcoholism that I've personally been involved with where classic methods have failed with. So moral psychology, psychotherapy, talk therapy, electroshock therapy, belladonna treatment, hydro, all these methodologies that they employed back in the day to try and help people overcome alcoholism. It wasn't working. And for scores and scores and scores of people, for the majority of people. Then he noticed a movement growing up within his hospital, and he's like, holy man, something actually is going on. And that's why he decided to write into AA, because he actually witnessed firsthand people who were ruthless junkies many, many times in treatment actually start to get sober for the first time and act different and seemingly become different people. So here's back to the first 100. The physician who, at our request, gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows. In this statement, he confirms what we who have suffered alcoholic torture must believe, that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life, that we were in full flight from reality, or were outright mental defectives. I'm one of those guys. These things were true to some extent. In fact, to a considerable extent with some of us, but we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. So, back in the day, people were thinking of alcoholism and addiction as just something that was going on in the mind. And so Dr. Silkworth is saying, no, something's going on in the body as well. And you guys can see this, like when you see those like classic boozers who just black out every time they drink, like there's something going on there that's way beyond mental illness, and that's a physical craving. When you see certain drugs have this in different strengths more than others too. Like if any single normal person, even if they're well balanced and they're psychologically correct, you give them some crack and they're probably going to want more crack. Now, a normal, well-balanced person wouldn't want to smoke crack in the first place, but if you somehow got them to do it for whatever reason, they would definitely want more. And I know lots of people who I definitely would not consider addicts or alcoholics that do cocaine on weekends when they're partying with their friends, mostly young people, and they, when you're starting to come down off that stuff, you want more. And that's not because you're mentally ill. That's just because the substance has a physical effect on your body, and it creates a thing, right? So the doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As laymen, our opinion as to its soundness may of course mean little, but as ex-problem drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account. So these guys aren't doctors, and they're not, they're not the authority on they're not the people who judge whether Dr. Silkworth's theory is right, but they are alcoholics, and they're like, that does make a lot of sense. It does seem like we do suffer from an allergy. Though we work out our solution on the spiritual as well as an altruistic plane, we favor hospitalization for the alcoholic who is very jittery or befogged. More often than not, it is imperative that a man's brain be cleared before he is approached, and then, as he has then a better chance of understanding and accepting what we have to offer. The doctor writes. So obviously, like detox and stuff like that. Like if you're full blown blackout mode, or you're in full blown drunk mode, or you're currently in withdrawals, it's like you're not gonna really be able to accept this AA program. So here's Dr. Silkworth's next letter. He says, again, starts off with a bold statement. The subject presented in this book seems to me to be of paramount importance to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction. So what does paramount mean, y'all? It means above all else. So the most important. So this is a chief physician at a nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcoholic and drug addiction. He says the subject presented in this book is of paramount importance. So again, this is why he didn't want to put his name on it, because he's saying this book is more important than what the medical community has to offer, which is like pretty insane if you ask me. I say this after many years' experience as medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction. There was, therefore, a sense of real satisfaction when I was asked to contribute a few words on a subject which is covered in such masterfully detail in these pages. We doctors have realized for a long time that some form of moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics, but its application presented difficulties beyond our conception. With our ultra-modern standards, our scientific approach to everything, we are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge. Ooh, fancy words. And this would be an example of what I like to call Jesus smuggling again. He says the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge. What could he possibly be referring to? Well, I think most people think that he's obviously referring to a higher power. And this is an example of the book slowly trying to get people on board with this higher power idea by saying little things like that here or there. Also, back when this book was first written, they were operating without a lot of information, but part of alcoholism is actually a mental illness or a mental disorder. And when a disorder within an individual occurs in the mind rather than in the brain or the body, it's very hard. It's impossible to get any kind of empirical data. Like the mind doesn't exist anywhere other than in our imaginations per se. It's not made of matter. It cannot be directly studied. So, scientists can measure levels of neurotransmitters. It can measure your dopamine, your serotonin. It can measure certain areas of your brain and activity or a lack thereof. It can x-ray you and see broken bones and stuff. But when you have a mental disorder, there's no empirical data. So, that's part of the reason why Dr. Silkworth thinks that doctors aren't perhaps the best equipped to help people recover from alcoholism, because it's not a simple mechanical issue. It's not a simple lack of dopamine. It's not a lack of serotonin. Although these are present in most alcoholics, there's not one definite thing that you can point to that you can say, hey, when we fix this, you will no longer be an addict and an alcoholic. It just doesn't work like that. Like, you try and give someone suffering from depression some antidepressants, and the chances are they're going to still be depressed after taking them is almost 100. There's certain symptoms that antidepressants can help you with and stuff like that, but, it's extremely hard to just use simple medical interventions to solve these types of complex problems. So, back to what the doctor says. He says, many years ago, one of the leading contributors to this book came under our care in this hospital, and while here, he acquired some ideas which he put into practical application at once. Okay, and this is when Bill got Oxford six-stepped before the 12 steps were created. Later, he requested the privilege of being allowed to tell his story to other patients here, and with some misgiving, we consented. So that's amazing that they consented to him, because, if some guy who's been into treatment 3 times and he can't get his shit together, and none of your other patients can get their shit together, he's like, hey, like, I have a story of hope. I have kind of a way out. As a doctor or as someone who's in charge, it's like you kind of don't really want this guy to go around and, tell people that he has a way out. It's like false hope. It's just not very ethical behavior. So it's like, I don't want this guy going around telling everybody that he knows how to get better when I don't even know how to get these guys. Like, me and my medical team can't even sober these guys up. But they actually let him do it. And there's another testament to how well this program works. These doctors actually saw something happen to Bill, and they were like, we have no idea what's going on. We can't help these people, but he's onto something. So we're going to let him say his piece. The cases we have followed through have been most interesting. In fact, many of them are amazing. The unselfishness of these men as we have come to know them. The entire absence of profit motive and their community spirit is indeed inspiring to one who has labored long and wearily in this alcoholic field. They believe in themselves, and still more in the power which pulls chronic alcoholics back from the gates of death. Ooh. Of course, an alcoholic ought to be freed from his physical craving for liquor, so that's be free of the allergy, right? The phenomenon of craving. And this often requires a definite hospital procedure before psychological measures can be a maximum benefit. So again, detox and withdrawal. If you guys have ever tried to do the steps withdrawing off opiates or benzos, it's not going to happen. There's no spiritual experience waiting for you in the throes of a detox. You just have to ride out that storm, get some water, get some sleeps, get some meals, and then you'll be able to do all the psychological work after. So here it goes. We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is the manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance on things human, again, there's a little bit of Jesus smuggling, their reliance upon things human, what the fuck does that mean? Their problems pile up on them and they become astonishingly difficult to solve. So again, this allergy, actually, no, never mind. We'll talk about it later. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. Please stop. Oh my God. The message which can hold and interest these people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are able to recreate their lives. If any feel that as psychiatrists directing a hospital for alcoholics, we appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand with us a while on the firing line. See the tragedies. See the despairing wives, the little children. Let the solving of these problems become a part of their daily work, and even of their sleeping moments. And even the most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. We feel, after many years of experience, that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them. So again, they're saying, like, we've been trying our asses off for years and years and years to help these people. It's not working. They finally found someone that's working, and they received a lot of hate for it. A lot of people were like, that's pseudoscientific garbage. That's nonsense. You guys are medical men. What are you doing? Like, all this stuff. And they're like, we get it, man. Like, this is completely offside. This isn't something that we normally engage in. This is not something that we normally condone. And this isn't something that we blame other people for condoning. But when you've worked at a place like this and seen everyone fail and fail and fail and chronic relapsing and people who are like, how can I not, like, what is the deal that I can't even stop myself from doing something that's killing me? And I don't want to die. I'm not suicidal, but I'm killing myself. I'm watching it happen, and I can't stop. Dealing with the wives of these men or the husbands of these women, dealing with their parents, they're crying. What's wrong with my boy? Like, you are in that environment long enough, and you start to see people get better. It's not a big mystery why these guys are like saying all these good things about the AA people, and they're saying, like, the biggest haters ever. If you guys saw this stuff and you saw what was happening, there's no way you'd be a skeptic anymore. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. Well, no shit. The sensation is so elusive that, while they admit it is injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. Oh, it's good for me. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. Yeah, you know what? I was like, well, I still have my job, and I still have my place, and I still have my girlfriend. Everything's fine. Well, my girlfriend left, but I still have a job, and I still have a place. And then I started showing up late at my job, and I was like, well, I still have my job. I'm just one of those guys who showed up late all the time. And then I didn't even get fired. I just couldn't work anymore because I was so tired and hungover all the time. So I just stopped showing up to work. And I'm like, well, I didn't get fired. I quit my own job. And then I lost my place that I lived in, and I was homeless. And I was like, well, yeah, well, I still have my motor skills. And like through every stage of my gradual and slow decline, I was like, I can control the situation. I'm in control. And that's kind of the one of the main delusions that we as alcoholics and addicts suffer from. Like we think we actually are in control of what's happening. Although any kind of we focus in on the micro situation. If we take a step back and we look at the trajectory of our lives, we don't want that. We don't want to feel like shit all the time. We don't want to be junkies. We don't want to be losing all this weight. We don't want to be unhealthy. We don't want to be unhappy, but yet we are. So what kind of control do we actually have? They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks or a hoot. Drinks which they see others taking with impunity. No negative consequences. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's a very little hope of his recovery. So that's what they're saying. We need an entire psychic change. Now, how we're going to get that, we're going to have to keep reading this book to find out. A little point that is important to mention. They're calling this allergy the phenomenon of craving. So basically in AA, there's two symptoms. There's the allergy and there's the insanity. The allergy is the first symptom. And that symptom is once you ingest drugs, you have little control over the amount you take after that. So once you start drinking, you have no idea when you're going to stop. And, like 7 times out of 10 or the majority of times, you're kind of like at the whim of circumstance. You don't know. When that train decides to stop, you're going to get off the train, but you don't necessarily have control over it. On the other hand, as strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, that very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. And these few simple rules would be the steps, right? Men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal. Doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me. Faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. Although he gives all that is in him, it is often not enough. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. So, again, we need an psychic change, and something more than human power is needed to produce it. There's another example of Jesus smuggling. Though the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, we physicians must admit that we have made little impression upon the problem as a whole. Many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach. And the types that don't respond to an ordinary psychological approach would be a real alcoholic, a chronic alcoholic. Both symptoms, right? I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. Okay, so that's like back to moral model stuff. It's not just the fact that we're bad people. There's an element of not having a choice involved in alcoholism. I have many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal which was to be settled on a certain date favorably to them. They took a drink or so prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount to all other interests, so that the important appointment was not met. These men were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. So when I'm at the bar and I feel sick and I'm kind of blackout drunk and it's almost like last call, and all I have is $20 left for a cab ride home, and that's the only way I know how to get home that night, and every sip of booze is making me feel more and more sick, and I'm no longer having fun and feeling good, which is why I went to the bar to hang out with people in the first place. I'm sitting at a table in the corner, unresponsive, pissing myself. No, just joking. And then the waitress comes by and I spend my last $20 on another pitcher for myself. There's something wrong with me. I'm not drinking to escape. I've already escaped. I'm gone. I'm not there anymore. I'm drinking to overcome a craving beyond my mental control. Something in my body is compelling me to drink more, and I can't wrestle that gorilla. Now, the same thing happens with me. I'm an opiate guy. So my primary DOC is opiates. Now, If there was no such thing as opiates, would I be a ruthless alcoholic? Yes, of course I would. And I'm an alcoholic too. When there's no opiates around, I drink my absolute face off. When there's opiates around, I opiate my face off, if you can even say that. And the same kind of dynamic exists. Like at a certain point with opiates, you can't get any more high. Okay? I smoked it personally, and at some point you just kind of max out, and you can have a big hoot or whatever, and it doesn't make you feel any different. With opiates, and probably with a lot of substances as well, like when you don't have any for the morning, it's the worst torture and the worst hell you could ever imagine in your life. It's the physical symptoms are insane. You're squirming, you feel uncomfortable in your body. For me, what's worse is the mental symptoms. The anguish and the depression and the hopelessness you feel the next day is so insanely crippling. It just like the entire life is hopeless and meaningless. Now, if you have a little tiny bit of opiates, even a tiny bit, like $5, one gufu, you can smoke that the next morning and it completely gets rid of all of that 100%, and you have, whatever day that you're going to have. I would always save that little hoot for the morning, right? And I would wake up and it would be like 3 a.m. and I know I can't get any more high. That's the first thing. Like it doesn't matter how much I have, I can't get any more high. I've been smoking this shit for 3 days straight, and there's no, I haven't waited long enough for me to be able to experience any effects again. So I'm topped out. So if I smoke what I have left for the morning, it's not even going to do anything. And that horish, that, that hellish torture that comes in the morning will come, and it'll be the worst thing ever. And I know that if I don't move a muscle, which is very easy to do when you're on down, I'm going to fall asleep in 10 seconds anyways. And I wake up and I go, should I take that hoot? And then I go, obviously not. Like every single reason is saying no, but I fucking do it anyways. And this happens to me almost every single time. And as soon as I smoke it and nothing happens, I'm like, oh shit, I'm going to be in for a horrible, horrible fucking morning. And then I have to go to work. And like, that's when I'm waiting out inside the liquor store so I can grab a Mickey before work, or I'm like chugging like Advil, like anything to make me feel better after that. And the misery of that next day is like absolutely insane. And I put myself through that situation literally hundreds of times. So again, these men were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control. There are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving, back to the book here, which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. The classification of alcoholics seems the most difficult, and is in much detail is outside of the scope of this book. There are, of course, the psychopaths who are emotionally unstable. That's me. We are all familiar with this type. They are always, just kidding, going on the wagon for keeps. They are over remorseful and make many resolutions but never a decision. There is the type of man who is unwilling to admit that he cannot take a drink. He plans various ways of drinking. He changes his brand or his environment. There is the type who always believes that after being entirely free from alcohol or drugs for a period of time, he can take a drink without danger. There is the manic depressive type, who is perhaps the least understood by his friends, and about whom a whole chapter could be written. Then, obviously this is the type of alcoholic I am. Then, there are types entirely normal in every respect, except for in the effect that alcohol has upon them. They are often able, intelligent, and friendly people. That's me. I'm 100% completely awesome and normal in every way. I'm the best guy ever. Everyone loves me. Strong, good looking, athletic, brave, smart, except for when I use substances, I'm not so good. Just kidding again. That's the type of alcoholic that everyone likes to think they are, but I've rarely seen these types of people. There's usually a bunch of different fuckeries or degeneracies as part of a human if he's an alcoholic or an addict, and I'm no different. I've got lots of fuckeries and mental illnesses. Okay? All these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy, which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. So it's really the allergy that makes us alcoholic or addict. It has never been, by any treatment which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence, Oh, and the Recovery Guy channel, we're not necessarily harm reduction based. We're abstinence based. Harm reduction is just using less drugs, harm reduction is just another word for making your life a bit better than it was before, but not that much better. And so any degree of harm reduction is completely awesome. Like any degree which you reduce the amount of drugs that you take is awesome, or you reduce the effect that drug use has on your life is completely awesome. For me, ultimately, the goal is abstinence. There's lots of cool things out there, guys. There's basketball, there's biking, there's rock climbing, there's guitars, there's video games, there's hanging out with friends, there's cooking, there's gardening. There's a million fucking things that you could do that makes life awesome, right? You don't like alcohol is just one of them. Weed is just one of them. If you're a ruthless junkie or alcoholic like I was, for me, it's just kind of like give it up. Like give it up. If you're the type of guy that needs it, like no, I have to use it as a crutch. Like, no, you fucking don't. You absolutely do not. You could do the steps, become happy, peaceful, and contented, build a life for yourself, and never touch any mind-altering substances for years at a time, and your life will be infinitely better than it's ever been before. So I don't want to hear that shit. Oh, my family, culture. It's like, oh, I'm Italian. Oh, I'm Croatian. Like, every single culture drinks their face off. Your culture isn't special. You're not special. You're just making up really, really, really dumb excuses so that you don't have to face life without a drink in your hand. And for me, that's like, just, I don't mind if you are if you relapse, you relapse. Like, let's just try again, right? And let's keep this goal of abstinence in mind. And, we have this ideal that we're striving towards. And if you fall short and your life is more complicated than other people's and, things get in the way, that's completely okay. And obviously I understand and empathize with that. But if you're going to make dumb excuses, oh, well, this and that, then you're not ready to get better. So frig off and then, suffer some more and then come in with some willingness. And then we can really work together, right? The only relief we have to suggest is I'm sorry, everyone. I didn't mean to be so harsh, but it's true. And I'm not sorry. You know what? I'm really not sorry. This immediately precipitates us into a seething cauldron of debate. Much has been written pro and con, but among physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed. What is the solution? Perhaps I could best answer this by relating one of my experiences. About 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated for chronic alcoholism. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. 1 year later, he called to see me, and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name and partly recognized his features, but there all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. I had talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel that I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger, and so he left me. A long time had passed with no return to alcohol. And this is a story I see all the time working at a treatment center. Like, I see hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people cycle through. And sometimes I see people on the street or, wherever I'm at, and I'm like, oh, there's that guy who came through the treatment center I work at. And they approached me to talk to me and, just say, how's it going and stuff like that. And it's like, I know your face, but I don't know you. I don't know who you are. And that's because when people go through this entire psychic change, things happen. The perceptual shift is so extreme, and the shift in your emotional framework and the way that you view and act in the world is so different and so profound. I'm like, this is effectively like a different person. This is not the same person that I knew. And that's awesome. That's really awesome. Because I don't think I need to explain it. It just is awesome. When I need a mental uplift, I often think of another case brought in by a physician prominent in New York. The patient had made his own diagnosis and decided his situation hopeless. He had hidden in a deserted barn, determined to die. He was rescued by a searching party and in desperate I've had a lot of coffee if you guys haven't been able to tell. I'm talking real fast. I'm slurring quite a bit, which is okay. He was rescued by a searching party and in desperate condition brought to me. Following his physical rehabilitation, he had a talk with me in which he frankly stated that he thought the treatment was a waste of effort, unless I could assure him, which no one ever had, that in the future he would have the quote unquote willpower to resist the first impulse to drink. His alcoholic problem was so complex and his depression was so great that we felt his only hope would be through what we then called moral psychology, and we doubted even if that would have any effect. However, he did become sold on the ideas contained in this book. He has not had a drink for a great many years. I see him now and then, and he is a fine specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through, and though perhaps he came to scoff, he may remain to pray. William D. Silkworth, MD. Wow, what a champion. Okay, you guys might come here because you're forced to be here. You know, I've even heard stories where people are like, yeah, I came to AA to prove everybody wrong and stuff like that. And, you know, maybe you came to be a hater, or you just came to get your woman off your back, or you came here to please the courts, or your union, your insurance company sent you here, or they were going to cut you off their benefits. Whatever the reason is, may you remain to pray. Meaning, hopefully, you can get past whatever kind of shit that you have in you, and you can just dedicate yourself to doing these steps. That's the doctor's opinion. So obviously next we're going to be covering Bill's story, which is like an entire case study. It shows, it shows both symptoms very clearly. It's a very eloquent case study where, Bill wrote it himself about himself. So he adds everything in there. You get your mental blank spots in there. You get your delusions in there. You get all the, he goes through each one of the steps in the chapter. It's a really good chapter. So don't forget to show up for that. Bring your books, bring your highlighters, bring your pen. Now, again, the little disclaimer here, which maybe I should have said at the beginning. I'm not your guys' sponsor, unless I am. But this is not meant to be in place of sponsorship. This is supplementary. If you guys are serious about recovery and you're looking for extra content and more breakdowns of what the book is and stuff like that, and you found my channel and you find it interesting, that's awesome. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, all that good stuff. But I would also suggest you guys go to meetings physically in real life with your persons. There's no substitute for human-to-human contact, and the strength of the relationship that you have with the person that you choose to be your sponsor is going to carry you through this journey a lot more than just hearing some random person that you may not know, listening to them while you're going for a run or while you're playing video, whatever you guys are doing. So make sure you get an actual sponsor. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.